How's it going, guys? White Rabbit here. I came across a video earlier today that kind of piqued my interest, and I wanted to go ahead and share at least most of it with you. Now, I don't know anything about this channel. I don't know if it's, if it has alternative motives. I haven't watched any of their other videos, but I just stumbled across this video. I thought it was great in relation to the Shill network and how shills operate online. I know I just recently put out a video about shills, and I'm kind of beating a dead horse at this point. But it brought up some new terminology that I wasn't familiar with before, and they listed off several different examples of real-world scenarios where shill activity has been reported, as well as future concerns in relation to shills as technology improves. So I'm going to go ahead and play this starting from a few minutes into the actual video, and I'll leave a link for the original video down below in case you guys want to check it out. And other than that, God bless.
This week, Matt and I are looking at something that you are probably familiar with because you're on the internet right now, that is paid online manipulation. It's a strange tactic in the digital age. No, let's make no mistake, propaganda is a tale as old as time. We trace the beginning of modern propaganda to a guy named Edward Bernays, and if you're familiar with this show, you're familiar with Edward Bernays. He's the guy who made bacon the premier breakfast food. He's the guy who got women to associate smoking cigarettes with voting. He's the guy who got the U.S. to go to Guatemala and fight a war in 1954.
You ignorant jerk, how could you say such thing about Americol?
No, it's a...
you ignorant jerk, how could you say such thing about Americop?
It's a historical fact. I feel like you're just repeating...
You obviously know not what you're talking about, you ignorant Americom.
Americom?
And
scene.
One last term we should get to at the end here is what's known as astroturfing. This comes from the idea of a grassroots movement, but of course, as the title suggests, it is fake grassroots. So astroturfing is a campaign that happens when really all of these messages are coming from the organizational source that is seeking support, but they're designed to look like it's a spontaneous upwelling of authentic support from the people. So if you see lots of Facebook commenters leaving positive reviews on the Facebook page of a business, but then you click on those people's profiles and they don't have any friends and their accounts were just created the day before, that might be some digital astroturfing taking place.
And that brings us to number 2. The second thing you need to know about online media manipulation is that corporations and commercial interests do it all the time. It could be something as small as some fake reviews on Yelp or on Amazon. It could be something much, much larger that also gets to the line between corporations and governments, and that would be false fronts, dummy corporations. One of my favorite examples of this is a place called Hands Off the Internet, a group of concerned internet users who...
but how concerned are they?
Right, how concerned are they? Because you have to have hands to type. Whatever, like they didn't, the marketing doesn't work. This was being sold as a grassroots movement against net neutrality and the FCC legislation at the time. But let's go back to look at some of the laws here. Now, the New York Attorney General, at the time we record this, a guy named Eric Schneiderman, actually took action against 19 different companies because he said that astroturfing is the 21st century's equivalent of false advertising. And you can see this online in so many places. You can see video game reviews written by interns of the companies who made the video game. You can see this when we see, of course, restaurant reviews by the people who own the restaurant. In this investigation of these fake reviews, they found that companies weren't only hiring their internal employees to write fake reviews, they're also outsourcing to other countries where people professionally write fake reviews about places they've never been, doing things they've never done, and it isn't a stretch to call that false advertising. The real threat when we see this stuff is the idea that people could purport to have authority they do not, or purport to be objective when they are not. Citizens for a concern, yada, yada, yada. Whatever that might be, it can be difficult to tell who actually owns or funds this enterprise. And whenever you're online and you see something that seems authoritative but also seems vague, be very, very careful and make sure you can figure out who's actually running the show behind the curtain.
Number 3, Some governments, and maybe lots of governments, already have armies of paid online manipulators that are out there amongst us, sowing the messages that their governments want you to believe. Now, one great example of this would be the chronicle that we've seen coming out of Russia. In 2014, a hacker group calling itself Anonymous International released a batch of documents including stolen emails between Russian officials that seemed to indicate the Kremlin was funding paid online manipulation tactics, including leaving blog posts and comments all over Russian language social media and the Russian language blog networks, and on English-speaking sites such as the Huffington Post, Fox News, Politico, The Blaze, and WorldNet Daily. Now, you may have encountered some of these paid online manipulators yourself. Say, for example, if you were reading an article about the 2015 assassination of the Russian dissident Boris Nemtsov, or if you were reading, say, about the 2014-2015 conflict between Russia and the Ukraine, it's very likely you saw this strange, sudden outpouring of pro-Putin, pro-Kremlin, anti-US, pro-Russian comments in the comments section. And if you follow through on many of these accounts, you would find strange features in common to them, like many of them are going to lack a personal photo, lack personal statements or biographical information, and lack an extensive posting history. One particular Russian agency suspected of trafficking in online manipulations is the St. Petersburg-based Internet Research Agency, which was profiled extensively in a June 2015 New York Times article. In that article, one former employee of this agency explained her daily grind, which was in the morning she would get into work and she would be fed a list of themes and ideas to promulgate throughout the day during these extremely long 12-hour shifts that would go 2 days in a row, where all day long she was blogging and leaving comments advocating these pro-Russian, pro-Putin, pro-government messages.
The thing is, we're not here to pick on Russia, because when we're talking about the sphere of international affairs, it's always much more complicated than the idea of a good or a bad force. China is doing this. The US is doing this. Israel is doing this. There are so many countries that if they're not doing it right now, oh, and let me add the United Kingdom to that list, if they're not doing it right now, it's probably because they can't afford to yet. But imagine if you're something the size of a nation state, it is in your best interest to control the international opinion such that it sways with your narratives. China is one of the most open or transparent governments pursuing this kind of thing through the use of two organizations. There's a private one known as the Water Army, which is spreading the same pro-China messages throughout the digital world, but then there's also the 50 Cent Army. I love this name, not to be confused with the MC at all. The 50 Cent Army was named this because they were paid per post, and there's actually a certified training course that you can take to become a member of the 50 Cent Army for managing public opinion. That's how unsecret this is. However, we should point out that in this sphere, it's a little bit different because a lot of that commenting, a lot of that internet work is based on quelling domestic unrest and diverting conversations about Taiwan, about various different anti-PRC or anti-China sentiments. Israel also has a very public profile with a lot of support from the government for these kind of campaigns, but in Israel it's marketed more as fighting against anti-Israel comments rather than propagating the narrative, which is the approach that other countries have taken. And then there's the United Kingdom and JTRIG, the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group. They have been doing some real sci-fi James Bond stuff with their surveillance techniques. They've been able to not only manipulate online polls, that was one of the big things they wanted to do, but they've also weaponized some of this stuff to the point where they could find one of my accounts, one of your accounts, you, Matt, you watching, maybe even working for JTRIG, they could find one of these accounts and they could have this person seemingly saying stuff that they would never say. This is where we get into number 4 on our list, which is that the tactics of online manipulation are continually evolving. It's more than just a couple of things like a DDoS or downvote brigade on Reddit. It's the idea that someone could take an identity and become someone else. And these people, when they start using these accounts, when the humans actually are touching them, these accounts come kind of pre-aged. There already is somebody with a posting history. And that's only one of the pieces of software in play. There's another thing called Megaphone, which sort of aggregates the idea of brigading, or the idea of having an entire crowd of people come in to stuff a ballot, to downvote, and it makes it very easy. If you have Megaphone on your computer, then you could just click on it, and then it would take you to the poll, and you would show up on the website and automatically vote the way you were supposed to vote. So very effective, and that's still not even all the software.
Right, so every time a website runs the question, who's the greatest Harry Potter character, you go and vote Ron.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, we can disagree.
Who's the guy who's like a wizard?
Gandalf. There's another thing, of course, the U.S. is doing this. Everybody is familiar with DARPA, our resident mad science wing of the U.S. military, and DARPA and the Pentagon have been working on how to automate this stuff in a way that has never been seen before, working specifically with a company called Intrepid, which leads us to the biggest point.
Number 5, the dead souls of the future are bots. Your human sock puppet operators, these meat puppets we were talking about earlier, come with a lot of problems. Number 1, they are expensive. In that New York Times profile of the Internet Research Agency out of St. Petersburg, the main former employee that they talked to in the article claimed that she was paid a salary of 41,000 rubles a month, which they said was about the same salary as a tenured university professor in Russia.
Oh.
Number 2, you can't always trust people to keep secrets. Robots keep secrets. People don't. You can get them to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but as many former employees of these projects have done, they can leak information. And then third, sometimes humans are kind of bad at this job. And we all know it's no secret, especially on the internet, that lots of people don't have really great writing skills. This has been a documented problem in this industry where poor grammar and poor writing skills have caused trouble getting the government's message across. So you've got all these problems, how are you going to answer them? Just write some software.
There's still a couple of problems with that as well, right? Like, we know that having someone address a crowd in a language that they do not speak natively can be a dead giveaway, right, for a human robot, or for a human online manipulator.
Well, of course it can, and this is an even bigger problem actually for the software of today, because the main advance that we're waiting on in order to have these bots really take over this job is the proliferation of cheap, high-quality natural language processing. These are the chat bots you may have encountered in the past. If you ever chatted with one of those computer programs that's designed to talk like a human, in a dystopian way, the government behind this wants something that's very good at that, to spread their message and make it seem like, I am a real person. I am a real person, you jerk.
You know, we want, ideally, in this situation, if we are someone in charge of one of these armies, we want something that is indistinguishable from Jane and John Q. Public, wherever they may live.
Right, and this is not that far off, in my opinion. In 2013, the web company Incapsula did a study where they estimated that already in 2013, 61.5% of all web traffic was bot traffic. Now that's for lots of different reasons. It might involve search engines cataloging what's out there on the web, but then it also might be link spamming and people trying to distribute malware and all kinds of other nefarious schemes that people use bots to crawl the web for. But it doesn't stop at web traffic. If you are on Twitter, you probably have some followers who are kind of like dead souls. They don't say much original. Their picture looks like something stolen from a stock photo website. There's just nothing much there, and yet they're doing something online. Maybe they're retweeting Arby's coupons. The internet analyst Lawrence Alexander wrote a post for a website called Global Voices Online, where he claimed he had used open source software tools to determine that a lot of these Twitter users just retweeting all of these pro-Kremlin messages and pro-Russian messages were in fact not even real humans, but they were operated by software.
Now, I have to ask you this, Joe, and you as well, listeners. Should we discriminate against bots? Will we be on the wrong side of history for differentiating between real people and artificial intelligence? I mean, probably once it gets more sophisticated. I'm just having some fun with that.
Fortunately, we won't be alive to regret it.
Well, you know, I think I've got some ambitions. Matt, what do you think? You're going to be alive when we have this argument about AI in Supreme Court?
No.
No, charred corpses all.
Charred corpses all. Well, on that note, Joe, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I've had a great time.
Yeah, guys, if you'd like much more information about this, check out our audio podcast we have coming out this week, featuring you're going to be on that one as well, right,
Oh,
Joe?
yeah. I'm looking
Not a
forward to
bot.
it. No.
Definitely you.
Nope.
So we hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe. And we have a question that we cooked up for you. Let us know in the comments. Can you prove that you're not a bot?
How could you say that, you AmeriCop?
It's just a historical fact. Damn it.